there were officers coming into the dorm with full on like hazmat suits. And that's when we knew, yo, COVID was serious.
All right, good afternoon. This is State of Florida versus Stephen Testa with multiple cases before the
Yo,
court.
what's good, man? It's your boy E. Addy King, and this is the Incarceration Podcast. And as you can see, man, this is the home studio, just switching it up a little bit. And if you look, man, and you see like the aesthetics behind me, yo, this is real chain gang prison memorabilia. All this is real letters from my bid that my mama saved, or my baby mama saved, and she gave back to my mom because she didn't want to keep it for whatever reason, obviously because she, hates me, whatever. Just pictures of me and my kids in visitation. You got the classic tuna packs. That's gold, and the chain gang, that's currency right there. Got the handcuffs, canteen bag, shower slides, prison blues behind me. Got the prison blues on. So man, listen, this is the Incarceration Podcast, where I share about how everything that I experienced throughout my incarceration has forever changed my life. This is the Incarceration. Listen, man, so normally every single day I watch the world news while I was incarcerated. And there's many reasons why I did that. And I think number one, the reason why I or most people watch the world news while they're locked up is because number one, you just want to stay in touch. You want to stay in the loop of what's happening in the culture. Just being isolated from the world, being removed from society. A lot of times, man, you can't tap out on the phone on a regular. It depends like what your situation is. If you got family, if you got friends supporting you, holding you down. And even if you do, a lot of the times, man, they can only do so much, especially if you're doing a long bid, years and years and years. Man, you're lucky if you catch on the phone maybe once a week, couple times a week, man, maybe even once a month. Depends everybody's situation. But for me, I would like to watch the world news daily just so I can stay in the loop of what's going on in the world. And then also too, man, because there's not much entertainment in the chain gang, so the TV room, the day room, watching TV, whether it be sports. And I like to stay as productive as possible, man. So I wouldn't really watch like movies or TV shows or the soaps or, reality TV or whatever they had in the day room, just because I wanted to be focused upon, like how I could continue to mature as a man. Number one, chase after Jesus, grow in my relationship with Christ, and just, continue to educate myself and use my time wisely. But still, daily, I watch the news, and that was just part of my routine. I come back from chow at dinner time, and that was one of the first things I would do. Before chow, I watch the local news. Not all the time, because normally if you're like in prison in the state of Florida, you're in like the boondocks, out in the woods. And the local news is some like old country hillbilly town, and the local news sucks. So I watch the world news, on a regular whenever I come back from chow. So this is whenever like COVID-19 really started popping off, and at the beginning, like especially like in New York, when like the morgues are getting full and everybody's dying, all the elderly, and man, it's kind of like chaotic and crazy, like on the news. And being in prison, we're removed from society. So we're only really hearing about this through the phone, through emails, through letters, and from what the police say, and like administration coming in, and obviously what we can watch on the news. So we see like pretty quickly, like just like everybody in the world, as like COVID's beginning to like, all right, pick up the pace, and it's beginning to like rapidly spread, not just throughout the nation, but throughout the world. Like, all right, like it's kind of, a big deal. But around this time, when COVID first started popping off, I think I only had like about 19 months left. And I had just signed up for work release. And work release is whenever like they release you from prison and you go to another facility, and you can leave that facility. You're still on your prison sentence. You can leave that facility and go to work daily, like catching the city bus or walking or riding your bike, depending upon how far it is. So you can save money, and the state gets half of that check, but to help you transition back home. It's a way to help like the incarcerated population like transition back into society, but it's also a great way for the state to run up a bag and get half your paycheck. So you can, meet that, criteria if you're eligible at 19 months or less. So I had what you call short time syndrome. It's whenever you're doing years in prison and you're like on the cusp, you're on the verge, the couple year mark of going home. Mentally, like you're so beyond prison. You're just ready to go home. You're just dying to get back to your kids and your family and just live a regular, normal life in society. So everything in prison pisses you off. The food sucks. You don't want to talk to nobody. You got what they call in prison short time syndrome. You're just disgusted with your environment in totality, and mentally you're already gone and you just want to go home. You want to make it out. You want to survive. And sadly, a lot of times that is the transition period where a lot of guys can crash out and make dumb, crazy moves and just kind of like self-sabotage, subconsciously, their release and lose their good time, lose their gang time, and, go to confinement and get a whole bunch of DRs, or some guys sadly even catching years more, whether it be through stabbings or attempt escape or whatever it may be, because, that 19 months and less, that waiting period of whether going to work release or going home, it's like, all right, now there's a lot on your mind. You've been in prison for years and now you're about to go home. So for me personally, this is when, I had short time syndrome and I didn't want to talk to nobody, you know what I mean? Everybody, of course, I'm still like actively involved in ministry and, making disciples and just allowing the Lord to use me to serve people and love on people and then grind and preach and teach on the yard and in the dorm and just like the average daily prison schedule and the missionary mindset the Lord had given me while I was incarcerated. But in comparison to years prior to where like, all right, this is home, like not home, but like, yo, it becomes your home. You're focused on the here and now. But now, like awaiting release is like, all right, I'm over this season. I'm ready for the next. So everything around you becomes super irritable. You get aggravated easily, more frustrated. And that's definitely where I was at. I was so over prison and I was so ready to go home. Plus, the girl who I was dating for like a year prior to this, who was my pen pal, who I fell in love with, which I will talk about specifically and in detail in another episode, who I swore was the wife that God had for me, cheated on me, broke up with me, ghosted me, and I found out she was pregnant. The only girl, the first girl in my life that I fell in love with. And I swore I was going to spend the rest of my life with her. All my release plans, like, focused on her and us starting a family together. All that happened, and then COVID hit. So personally, for me, COVID was the worst experience all throughout my years in prison. So the point that I was getting at, as far as having short time syndrome, I stopped going in the TV room just because there was so much chaos. I mean, that's just where like everyone's loud and yelling and arguing and fighting over the TV, or everyone's got something to say about whatever's on TV. So a lot of times, man, like I normally stayed away from the day room, the TV room anyways, unless there's something like really good on I wanted to watch or some type of sports event. But like I said, mainly I watch the world news, the local news, and TMZ nightly. TMZ to stay in touch with culture, especially like the hip hop culture. Local news just to see what was going on in Florida, and the world news just so I could be in the loop of what's going on in the world and in culture. But when I had short time syndrome, man, I'm aggravated, I'm irritable with everybody. I'm not even really watching the world news. But COVID-19's popping off. All right, I'm dipping in the day room. I'm watching the TV, seeing what's going on. And, as COVID's progressing, you see like the morgues, like in New York, getting full, and you see like they don't even got places to put the bodies, and you just see like all the black, bags, with the dead bodies in it, and then putting in the freezers outside the hospital in New York, like it's getting real, and then they do all the quarantine lockdowns, and, people can't go outside, and people aren't going to restaurants and all this stuff, and it's rapidly like progressing. And being in prison, being removed from society, like, okay, we hear about it, we can see it on TV, police tell us, family tells us, friends, whatever, from the phone, emails, letters, whatever. But we really don't necessarily get affected by it, especially like at the beginning. But there's ongoing conversation like on the news, and then especially like in the prison system, inmate.com, that's like the slogan for this, all the rumors going around the prison compound about what's going to happen when COVID-19 hits the prison system. And on the news, they're talking about it already. Like whenever like COVID hits the retirement homes and all these places to where people are confined, hospitals, retirement homes, especially like the elderly, and even prisons, because everybody lives in a confined area together in which we really can't quarantine. It's impossible. Like it's going to rapidly spread and everybody's going to get sick. So there's rumors, everyone's talking about it like, yo, like it's gonna run through like the entire prison system. So everybody's like not really knowing what to expect. And we kind of like all know it's coming, you know? And then the first person on the pound gets sick. That dorm gets quarantined, shut down. They're not going to chow, they're not going to rec. Whenever you're in prison, you got a chow hall, and everybody walks the chow dorm by dorm. And whenever there's a dorm, if there's like a stabbing or if they're wilding out or like there's a riot popping off over there, if they want to isolate the conflict, they can lock down just that one dorm. And then they'll send like the food service workers with big carts with the trays of food on it to that dorm so they can feed the dorm in the dorm. Or if they're in a T building, like a 2-man cell. Or if they're like in an open bay dorm, they line up and they get their trays and just eat at the bunk, whatever. So this dorm with the person that got sick, they quarantined it. They shut them down because they want to isolate, COVID-19 from spreading throughout the compound. They're sending back the trays back to that dorm. So that's like the first day. And then all of a sudden the next day, and then a person in another dorm sick. And then they quarantine that dorm. And they begin to like empty out one dorm. And now they're emptying out all the people in this dorm, and now that's the isolated quarantine dorm. So now the people who are getting sick or even have symptoms of a fever, they're removing them from their dorm and they're sending them to the quarantine dorm. So they're trying to isolate the outbreak of COVID-19 in this one specific dorm. That's their process, that's their procedure of what they're trying to do to contain COVID-19 in the prison. And of course, they're following protocol and whatever procedures they're getting from the upper authority in Tallahassee and the state of Florida and things like that. But we all know as the convicts, the inmate population, that no matter what they try to do, they're not going to be able to stop, this freaking, pandemic from spreading throughout the entirety of the prison. I mean, we all live in the same dorm. We all go to the same exact places. No such thing as quarantine in prison at all. I don't care how hard you try. But now it gets serious, because they shut down the entire compound. No chapel, no rec, no canteen, no visitation. Whenever they cancel visitation from like people's families and loved ones and wives and kids coming in to see them, it's serious. It's either a huge like riot going on the compound, huge type of security risk. Something's like got to be super serious for them to cancel visitation. So when they shut down visitation, they don't want no people coming in, who has COVID-19 to continue to spread, the pandemic throughout, the prison. So we know it's serious. They completely shut down and quarantine every single dorm and everything on the prison compound. So this is literally the worst, hardest time I've ever done incarcerated, over 12 years in prison, hands down. Why? All right, now listen. In prison, obviously you're removed from society, your freedom is removed from you, but still being incarcerated, like you have choices, you have like options of how you do your time. You can go to school, you can go to rec, you can work out, you can get educated, you can go to chapel services, there's different programs you can go to, so whenever you get in trouble in prison for fighting, for disrespect to administration, whatever you can get in trouble for, they throw you in confinement. They put you, in a hole. And that's when they take you from the dorm that you live in and they put you in another dorm to where you're locked down like 23 hours a day, more than that, because normally when you're in confinement, you don't get the hour rec. You have to be back there over like 30 or 60 days, whatever. Sometimes you have to be even on CM to get rec while you're in confinement. So whenever they put you in confinement, you're literally in a two-man cell, locked down 24 hours a day, take a shower 3 times a week. That's confinement. So that's hard time. You don't get nothing, you know what I mean? You don't even get your tablet. You don't get, sometimes you get books, maybe Bible, whatever. Extremely hard to get reading material back there. The worst way you could do time is behind the door. 24-hour lockdown, 23-hour lockdown, whatever. So imagine when quarantine hits and they shut down everything, all those little freedoms that you have while incarcerated, they're gone. No more walking the child, no more going to rec, running, working out, playing sports, no more going to school, no more going to chapel, no more doing anything that you normally do a part of your everyday schedule. Remember now, schedule in prison is everything because schedule speeds up your time. You can't just lay around on your rack all day because time's going to drag. You're going to mentally kill yourself if you're laying around doing nothing. So you got to stay busy. You got to have a fire schedule. You got to have a schedule that's slap full with doing the things that you enjoy, that's productive, not only so you can make the best of your time, so that way the time keeps going, bro. Because in prison, yo, time slows down like times a million, you know, and it can be super depressing. And now your mind's going everywhere, thinking about how you're missing out on your kids, and you're worrying about your girl, and you're thinking about the streets and when you're gonna go home, and it's not for years. If you can even go home, that's when you get depressed, that's when you get sad, that's when you get angry, and that's when bad things happen. That's why one of the biggest, like, prison bid hacks is getting a schedule and staying busy, staying productive. So whenever they shut down everything and quarantine the whole compound, man, things got bad. And it wasn't at first, everybody was like, all right, no one really knew what was going on. People, I think, were kind of like scared, you know, like myself included, like the unknown of like, what is this whole COVID-19 thing? People are dying. The news is making it look crazy, you know? So it's like, all right, what's going on? And then as time progresses, it's kind of like, I guess, like, I wouldn't say cool, but it's a different change of schedule for us. So even whenever difference of schedule happens, and even if it may not be necessarily good, like, dang, bro, we can't even go to the store. We can't go to canteen. We can't go to rec. But hey, like, there's no school, no mandatory yard, no mandatory programs that sometimes people don't want to do. So it's kind of like a maybe mini vacation. So no one's really like too bent out of shape about it at first. But then as days go by, as week goes by, people start running out of food from the canteen. We ain't getting no rec, and that's part of everybody's schedule. Not everybody, but a lot of people schedule how to get stress, you know, off their chest for their mental, you know what I mean? Being able to work out or play sports, physical activity. Now there's more fights popping off in the dorms. You know what I mean? People are getting robbed because they got more canteen and this person ran out of canteen. And now it's like, all right, cabin fever is kind of like stirring up. And you can even hear about stabbings throughout the compound. And you just know it's because like there's hostility like being built up in the dorms, and people are being confined and they don't know what's going on, and they're frustrated and they can't go to visitation to see their family. And it's, you know, now it's kind of getting like real after like a couple weeks in. And keep in mind, for me, I'm just trying to go home. And they're not even doing transfers anymore at this time. I signed up for work release, so I'm waiting on this bus any day now to take me away from prison to go to a work release center so I can start making money. I can get out of prison, even though I'm still on my prison sentence, and I can start preparing for my release, man. Number one, I just want to get out of prison. So I just want to go, but also keep in mind, yo, listen, the love of my life just broke up with me. She cheated on me, ghosted me, and I just found out she's pregnant. So I'm super depressed. I'm already not eating. My whole world is crashing down. And then the world stops on top of all that. And my prison bid just got 10 times harder. So this right now was an extremely tough, rough, hard time period for me. Hands down, the worst time, the hardest prison time I ever did in my life. I'm just begging and pleading and asking God to please somehow let them unquarantine everybody, open up the pound, let me get on the bus and go to work at least and get from around here because I want to go home. But this is when it got really serious. The police came in the dorm for count. with hazmat suits on. I'm talking about like head to toe, like spacesuits. They came in the dorm with hazmat suits. And I remember at first when they came in, everybody's like clowning and laughing, like calling the police like aliens and saying it look crazy and just whatever type of like movie references they can think of. They're just like spraying the police, laughing, clowning them. But I think also too, like people are really thinking like in their minds, like, dang, dog, like this is serious. You know what I mean? Because like I think the macho side of everybody, not wanting to talk about their feelings and their real emotions as we're watching the news and we're seeing and hearing about all these people dying like all throughout the nation and the nation like on lockdown and quarantine and people not going outside and people not going to public places and all of these things and just the pandemic rapidly increasing, like we don't know how to take it and we're like obviously we know it's serious and we're already thinking about what's going to happen when it hits the compound and we're already hearing about people getting sick, but we're not really hearing much else. And people are getting sick in the dorm, but nothing like really too serious. But then like the police come in like with these hazmat suits on, we're like, dang. So like it kind of, I think for me at least too, I'm like, dang, like this is really like serious. Like I think it kind of like hit home, for the first time, like at that moment, like dang, like this COVID stuff is like the real deal. So listen, man, this is your boy EI the King, and this is the Incarceration Podcast where I talk about prison, pre, post, and present. How everything that I experienced throughout my incarceration has forever changed my life. This is the Incarceration. So listen, man, let me know in the comments. Do you like the new home studio? Do you feel like I should go back to the real deal professional studio? Let me know. And also too, man, just go ahead and drop in the comments, man, how do you feel like you would handle being incarcerated throughout COVID? Like, what was your COVID experience like? And, this question's for me being incarcerated throughout COVID. Go ahead, light up the comments. Once again, if you love this video, man, drop a fire emoji. If you hate it, go ahead and just put a trash bin, man. I don't really care. And also, too, man, I do have another podcast. It's on my other channel, the official EI the King music channel, and it's called Let Me Talk, Bro. Go ahead, run it up. I talk about more in detail my life, my walk following Christ, ministry, music, all that. It's your boy EI the King. Stay